Greetings, all praise the King. Welcome. On this Sabbath, the Lord has brought us to the book of Mark, chapter 8. Mark, surname for John, also known as Marcus, said to be first introduced in this book in chapter 14 as the young man that lay hold of the Christ, leaving the linen and fleeing naked, signifying a rebirth. Now this was a student of Peter. A testament of truth in that even Peter is not seen, is all righteous all the time, even in this chapter. So for the student of Peter to write about these faults of Peter gives it credence. Now, Marcus is also referred to as my son by Peter in Peter's writings, and as it is known that he is in Rome, that is John Mark, and referred to as Babylon, then we know the word of Rome and Babylon are synonymous amongst thy people. And this book is first introduced as the Christ is being followed by the multitude, in those days being very great. And they had journeyed with the Christ for 3 days. Being without food, the Christ was not willing to send them away hungry, for he said some had come from afar and made faint by the way. So the disciples, lacking the faith, questioned, how is this? Even though 5,000 had already been fed with the 5 loaves, the disciples are saying, we only have 7 loaves. Christ saying, bring them to me. The Christ then begins to feed the multitude, in that so much that the multitude leaves 7 baskets of fragments. This is the second time that Christ has fed the multitude, the first time being the 5,000, in which 12 baskets were taken up. The Christ then proceeds to his town called Dalmanutha, where the Pharisees come to tempt the Christ, seeking a sign. And the Christ sighs deeply. That spirit that says that they are wrong. And even that spirit being a shield to protect I and I. And the Christ says, for verily I say unto you that this generation shall see no sign, even though if the Christ had performed the miracles. And so it was because the people, the Pharisees, chose not to see, that they could not see. The Christ comes to a place called Bethsaida, and meets the blind man of Bethsaida. who is begging to receive his sight. And the Christ spits in his eyes, and he begins to see men like trees walking. Yet it wasn't until the Christ laid hands on the man that the man began to see clearly. A testament for I and I, when called to perform our duty, so that I and I may be granted with this truth. We all may perceive to see clearly what it is that we have to see. Now, as the Christ proceeds into Caesarea and asking the disciples, who do men say I am? Well, they say, some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, some say the prophets. And Christ said, who do you say I am? They say, you are the Christ. And the Christ begins to tell them about what is to come, the crucifixion and being risen. And Peter rebukes, no, it shall not be. And the Christ turns and says, get you behind me, for you savor the things that are of men, and not the things that are of Jah. For what shall a man profit if he gain the whole world and lose their soul? Let those that follow I deny themselves and take up the cross. Bear the burden. To lose their life shall save it. Even for the king's sake. Shall we know of truth. For when the disciples had questioned the Christ, when the Christ had stated to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of Herod, they perceived it that he spoke because they were low in supply. Again, the lacking the faith. To seek first the kingdom of Jah, and all may be added. And the Christ said, do you perceive to not know of this truth? That how many fragments of bread did you take up? 12. And the second time, 7. So that when corruption fills the world forgets who is the bread maker. Who is the one that supplies them in their time of trouble? Did I say? None other than Jah, the Master